You know that feeling, right? You're working on yourself, you're making what feels like real progress, and then, bam, suddenly you feel like you've been thrown right back to square one. It's just so frustrating. That whole 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing can feel more like 1 step forward and 5 steps back. Well, today, we're going to dig into why that happens, why healing and personal growth are never, ever a straight line.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We are culturally obsessed with this idea of linear progress. Just get a little better every single day, climb that ladder, never look back. That's the plan, right? But our inner world, our psyche, it just doesn't work that way. It's not a calendar. It's more like this spiral. It loops back, it revisits old stuff, not to torture you, but to actually give you another shot at processing it, maybe from a new perspective.
And this is where that feeling of failure comes from, right? It's this clash between what we expect, that straight line, and what's actually happening. You think, this again? I'm just regressing. All that therapy, all that work for nothing. It feels like you're stuck in a loop. But here's the thing. What if it's not a loop? What if it's a spiral, and you're just circling back to an old issue, but this time you're a little higher up? You have more tools, more insight.
So this whole idea that we're failing when we don't move in a straight line, it's totally understandable why we feel that way, but it's also based on a pretty modern concept. I mean, this obsession with clock time, with linear, measurable progress, that really kicked into high gear with the Industrial Revolution. For most of human history, people saw time as cyclical. Like the seasons. Winter comes, but spring always follows. Life ebbs and flows. So this idea that our personal healing should run like an assembly line with predictable outputs, no wonder we get so frustrated. Our souls just aren't factories. And to really see how this plays out in a powerful way, I want to share a story. It's a case study from a psychoanalyst named Juha Klaavu about a really successful guy. We'll just call him Mark. And honestly, his story is a wild illustration of these hidden cycles we're talking about.
So who was Mark? Well, he was that guy. You know the one. He had it all figured out. Super successful career, great dad, loving husband. He was the rock, the main provider for his family. I mean, from the outside looking in, and even from his own point of view, he was the definition of a stable, capable adult.
But then, everything changed. A massive crisis hit his business. And we're not talking about a small dip in profits. We're talking about the whole thing being on the brink of total collapse. This was a guy who had poured his life, his savings, everything into this company. So this wasn't just about his job, it was about losing everything, his house, his family's security, the whole shebang.
Now look, this was a huge amount of stress for sure. But Mark was no stranger to pressure. He was a leader, a problem solver. This is what he did. So what broke him? Why did this one crisis not just stress him out, but completely shatter the very person he was?
Because what happened next was shocking. He didn't just get stressed. He became a totally different human being. This confident, capable man, he was gone. In his place was someone who was timid, constantly afraid. He couldn't handle social situations. He felt completely powerless, like he couldn't even think straight. It got so bad, he couldn't even bring himself to go to the grocery store. It was like the Mark everyone knew had simply vanished.
And then, after some time of just forced rest, where he couldn't really do anything, something incredible happened. He said it was like a fog just lifted in the blink of an eye. The fear? Gone. That feeling of being powerless? Vanished. He was back. He was himself again. That same strong, capable guy. And just like that, he got up, made the tough calls, and saved his business. So, what in the world was that? What was this fog that just took him over? And maybe more importantly, how can a personality, a whole person, just disappear and then reappear like someone flipped a light switch? Well, the answer gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today, the hidden layers of our mind.
And this is where we get back to that psychoanalyst, Juha Klaavu, because his theory is what unlocks this whole mystery. His idea basically is that we're not just one single unified person, we're more like a collection of different self-states. And some of these states are like, well, they're like ghosts from our past.
Okay, so here's the first big idea. It's called the inauthentic self-state. Think of it like this. When you were a little kid and something really overwhelming or traumatic happened, a part of you kind of got frozen in that state of chaos and fear. It's an echo of that younger you. It's in you, but it's not the real adult you. And under enough stress, that old state can literally take the driver's seat.
The other piece of the puzzle is what he calls the basic self. And that's pretty much who you think you are.
It's your everyday, functional adult personality. The you that goes to work, pays bills, solves problems, and generally navigates the world. It's the us we identify with. This was the Mark that Mark knew.
Okay, so here's the big reveal. That fog that took over Mark, it wasn't some new breakdown, it was an old one. His competent, adult basic self got hijacked. It was shoved aside by one of those inauthentic self states from his childhood, a part of him that felt completely helpless, powerless, and victimized.
And this is just, wow, it explains so much, doesn't it? Because look at the mismatch. Adult Mark was facing a complex, scary, but ultimately solvable financial problem. But the part of him that took over, that little kid's self-state, it wasn't seeing a balance sheet. It was feeling pure, overwhelming terror. It was feeling like a tiny child staring up at giant, scary monsters that it had absolutely no way of fighting.
So this isn't just some wild story about one guy. This dynamic, this internal cast of characters, it exists in all of us. And understanding this is, I think, the key to being a lot kinder to ourselves when we feel like we're falling apart or going backwards. And Klaavu has this amazing analogy to help it all click. Just imagine for a second, you walk up to a 7-year-old kid and you say, okay, you're in charge now. You need to get a job, pay the bills, manage my entire adult life. Go. What would happen? That kid would be paralyzed with terror. They'd feel completely and totally helpless. That is what it feels like for you when one of these childhood states gets activated and is suddenly faced with your adult-sized problems.
Which means these moments that feel like regression, they're not you failing. They're not a sign that your healing isn't working. They are literally echoes of your past self, bubbling up to the surface. It's your mind's way of saying, hey, remember this? We never fully dealt with it. It's a younger part of you asking, begging, to finally be heard and taken care of by the competent adult you are today.
So why does any of this matter to you? Well, a few big reasons. First, it just confirms it. Healing is a spiral. It's okay to revisit old stuff. Second, it helps us realize this is normal. Being under intense stress can trigger these old versions of you. It's not a flaw in your character, it's just how we're wired. And maybe the most important thing is that just knowing this can take so much of the fear and the harsh self-judgment out of the equation when it happens.
So, I want to leave you with this. The next time you get that sinking feeling, that, oh no, not this again feeling, just try to pause. Instead of beating yourself up and asking, why am I back here? Maybe try a different question. Ask yourself, okay, who's here right now? Which part of me just showed up? And what does this younger me need to hear from adult me to feel safe? Seriously, that one little shift in perspective, it can change everything.